Alarm management. DataMiner offers you a series of actions you can do on an alarm. We're working typically in a multi-user environment, so it is quite interesting to make sure that your colleagues are up to date about the exact state of an alarm. Is somebody working on it? Should I ignore the alarm? Masking, taking ownership, simply adding comments. Those are the features that we will take a look at in the alarm management. Those are the things here mentioned as well, but first we will take a look at alarm linking, which is not really a user action. It is something that the system does by default. The system is basically going to make sure that an alarm, whenever an alarm happens in your DataMiner system, it typically starts maybe as a warning. It might later on go to a critical alarm. Somebody might mask it or take ownership. So that's like a full history of one alarm, and that's what we call the life cycle of a single alarm. So the life cycle, that's the alarm linking. It's nicely tied together into the life cycle. Next to that, we will take a look at the alarm ownership. I can simply put my name on there to make sure that other people are aware that I'm working on this alarm. You can also take it a step further and mask the alarm. That is basically suppressing the alarm, moving it away to the masked tab page so that it doesn't influence the overall state of the system anymore. And then we also have clearing. That's more in special cases that you can clear certain alarms, because typically the alarm needs to disappear on the actual elements. The parameter needs to go back into a healthy state before the alarm disappears. But there are some exceptions there. We can also simply add some comments to an alarm, and there is also the clearable state. That's a special state you can activate for a special situation. That might be interesting. Now, first of all, the alarm linking. As I mentioned before, an alarm starts in the DataMiner system as a new alarm, and it is open. Then over time, the severity can escalate or drop. Somebody can take ownership. Maybe some comments were added. All these kind of things can happen throughout the life cycle of an alarm. Now, when the alarm is back to normal, it will disappear from your system and then it's gone. Now let's take a look at that in the details panel as well as in the list in my DataMiner system here. So first of all, when I have an alarm with or without history, you can easily see that with the line in front of the alarm. A single line in front of the alarm means that there is no history. That's a brand new alarm. It popped up and nothing changed yet. It might still change later on, of course, but currently those are all new alarms. Nothing happened with it yet. But I do have, for instance, here this alarm. It has a double line, so something happened to it already before, and I can open up the arrow to actually see the full life cycle of the alarm. And you can see that at the very bottom, it actually started as a major alarm at 33 seconds, and 2 seconds later, it escalated to a critical alarm, and then apparently some acknowledgement was being done of the alarm and some unresolved action. So that's the full life cycle, and that's why we have the root time where the problem originally started and the time which is indicating the last updates. So the life cycle, the linking is immediately available inside the alarm console, or you can go to the show side panel and you can see the history in there as well. So here we can also clearly see it started as a new major alarm, it escalated, it was acknowledged, it was unresolved at those times. So that's the alarm linking, which is very useful, of course, to immediately see the full history of one single alarm. We're not yet talking about history alarms, but the life cycle is a little bit of the history, you could say, of one single alarm. Now the first, before we go to the first action, the correlated alarms are actually a special case of the alarm linking. A correlated alarm, you can see it here on the screenshot, is actually indicated with a special icon. It is something that the correlation engine detected in your system. It said like, okay, there are some alarms happening in your system and I want to maybe group them together into one single alarm. That's one of the correlation actions you can do in the correlation engine. So the correlation engine has certain detection mechanisms to detect certain patterns in your system, and it can react on that. So it detects something and then it takes some action, which could be, for instance, going to a backup element or executing some automation scripts, notifying somebody, or generating a correlated grouped alarm, nicely combining all of the raw element alarms into one single meaningful alarm for the operator, so that I only see one alarm instead of 10 different alarms. And that one alarm, that correlated alarm, has a nice, meaningful description why this situation is occurring in my system. So a correlated alarm is one of the possible actions from a correlation rule. So as I said, it is indicated with a little bit like a dotted icon here. And if you open up a correlated alarm, it doesn't show the history. You can still see the history in the side panel, but it shows you the raw alarms that triggered this group to be executed. I do have an example of that, not on the DCP DMA, but on the demo DMA here. I have a receiver side, and I have a number of receivers there, 5 to be more specific. And if I start generating some alarms on those receivers, you will notice that in the alarm console, if we take a look at that, we have some EPNO alarms on those devices. We already have 3 of our receivers going down. And actually, we defined a correlation rule. If the whole site, if 5 of my receivers there, all of them, go into alarm, it's not an alarm anymore with a signal, but it's most probably a site alarm there. And I group those 5 alarms, element alarms, together into one correlated alarm. And this correlated alarm says like multiple events detected. Maybe that's a rain fade happening on that site. If I still want to take a look at the alarms that actually triggered this correlation rule, the raw element alarms underneath it, the sources of the correlation group alarm, you can open it up and see the individual receivers that actually generated the alarms here. So the correlated alarms have a special icon, and if you open it up, you don't see the alarm history, but you see what caused the alarm to happen. Okay, now let's take a look at that first action, more specifically taking ownership. So the first simple action I can do, I can notify my colleagues like, I'm working on this problem, I put my name on the alarm, that's my alarm that I take ownership of. When an alarm is being generated in the DataMiner system, it is by default, let's have a quick look, it is by default the owner column here, system. So by default, the system is the owner and it is a new alarm. Or let me more specifically take a look at the user state column, which is not shown by default, user status. User status, let me collapse that one. So by default, it is not assigned, and those ones are actually unresolved. Why is that? Well, if I take a quick peek in the history, you will see that Bert, myself, was actually acknowledging the alarm before, and then I unresolved it again. So then it came back to not assigned, but unresolved. So there is a distinction. If an initial alarm happens, it is not assigned, then it can go from not assigned to acknowledged, and somebody's name will be on there. If you release it again, it goes not to the not assigned, but to the unresolved. So you can see always if some alarm already had some owner before, yes or no. And remember from the cube sidebar video that the alarm blinking, that is something which is by default not active in the DataMiner system, but you can activate that. If the alarm blinking is activated, all the alarms coming in will be blinking, will be flashing, the icon will be blinking there, until somebody takes ownership, and then the icon will be steady. So that's a clear, if you use alarm ownership, that's a clear indication there if an alarm is already taken, has already an owner or not. So a new alarm pops up, it blinks, you take ownership, it stops blinking. So if it stops blinking, it's clear somebody is already taking ownership of that. Now, how to do that? You right click on the alarm and you say take ownership or release ownership if you want to release it again, and you can optionally add some comments on there. The comments will be added in the comments field, and we will nicely show that in the demo in just a second. But first I want to mention that you can also, a more admin right you can give to somebody, you can also release the ownership of another user. So if somebody takes ownership and he went home in the evening, and you come in and you say like, okay, I want to take the ownership and put it on my name now, you do have actually the possibility to give somebody sufficient rights to be able to release the ownership of another user so that you can take ownership. Now let's play around with that. So I have my alarm that I created before. So I can simply right click on there, take the ownership, add some comments on there, like just a training note that I want to add, take ownership, and my name is now added to the alarm and it is acknowledged. Remember, from the columns, you can also add that action column ownership, and then it will also visualize that in there. Let's put it up front, that this alarm has you as an owner. If I take another one, that's actually an interesting button because then you don't have the pop-up. So it's a little bit like a shortcut as well. You're not adding the comments, but it does it immediately. The comments can be visualized by adding the comments in there. And then you can see the columns comments. Let's put it a little bit more up front so I can see it in the tooltip. Here with a training note, for instance, that I added on there. So I have two alarms on my name already. If I want to release the ownership of the alarm, you can right click on it, and now I have release ownership instead of take ownership in there. I can again add optional comments. I won't do that now. And again, this is now owner system unresolved, so I have not fixed the problem yet. Also, the icon can of course be used to quickly disable or put it on unresolved again by clicking on the icon, and now my user is also removed from the second alarm. So both of the alarms are back to the system with the unresolved state. That's of course also nicely tracked into the history where somebody takes ownership or unresolved or ownership unresolved. I've already done it a couple of times also in the alarm details card. So that's taking ownership of the alarm, making sure that the other people are aware that you are working on the problem, and you can clearly see which alarms have not been picked up yet, optionally with the blinking. Now masking. Masking is probably the most frequently and most popular feature of the alarm management. Masking goes a step further because the alarm is really taken away, you could say. It is taken from the active alarms tab page and it's moved to the masked alarms, which is a little bit more hidden away. And moreover, it is also no longer impacting your overall alarm state of the element and all the views on top of that, in case you have it somewhere in the surveyor bubbling up. We will take a look at that in the demo as well, because that already shows you that the impact is bigger. You can really just mask alarms and it's like they don't exist. So be careful with this feature, but that makes it also powerful to make it really clear to other people that they should not worry about this alarm. Now, you can right click on an alarm and you can go for that mask alarm. You will get a few steps you will need to populate or you will need to fill in before you can mask it. I'll immediately come back to that. So you can mask it. Whenever you have a masked alarm, you will have the option to unmask it. Note also that you can do multiple or mask an alarm again if you, for instance, went for a time masked. I'll show that to you. Now, let's say that we right-click on an alarm and we want to mask it. The first thing that will pop up is this page at the back here, where it will ask me like, okay, do you only want to mask the alarm that you selected, or do you actually want to mask the complete elements? Because maybe they are working on the elements and there might be some other alarms that are going to pop up. So I can immediately mask the complete element so that what will happen on this element, it will no longer pop up as an active alarm, but immediately be a masked alarm. I'll show both examples in a demo. The next step that I will need to do is, well, normally defining the timing, but there is an optional step in between. And that optional step is something which is by default not configured on the DataMiner system, but you can do so by going to the properties configuration XML. And there you can say like, yeah, whenever somebody does a mask action, I want him to choose a certain possible value. And I do have that configured on the demo system here. So if we right-click on an alarm, we go for mask. So the first is this alarm or the complete element. Let's just go for this alarm. And here it doesn't talk about timing, but it talks about an additional step here because I cannot fix it or because it's not urgent. Those two pieces of text are defined by the user in the properties XML. So this is not something hard-coded in the system. So you choose which options they have, 2 or 3, or what the exact wording is that you want to specify in there. And then if you click on it, you can continue to the next step about the timing. So you only have that when that is configured. So typically that won't be the case in a default system. After I specified this alarm or the elements, I need to specify how long do you want it to be masked. The first option is for a limited period of time. I know they are working on this for like 20 minutes. Let's mask it for half an hour. Or you can also go for until unmasking. That's basically indefinitely, forever. You don't know yet if they are going to be finished today or tomorrow. I'll just mask it forever. And whenever I know that they are going to notify me whenever they are finished, they let me know. I can unmask it again in here. Or you can also go until cleared. Until cleared means that if the DataMiner system detects that everything is normal again, the alarm disappeared, it will automatically unmask the alarm. And the next time it would occur again, it will immediately pop up again as an active alarm. Now, the final step will then be the comments that I can add again, but also if you went for a timed masking, like half an hour or 10 minutes, you will need to specify, of course, the timing. Note that if I mask it for 10 minutes and after 5 minutes, the guys call me and say like, yeah, this is gonna take at least half an hour, I can mask the element or the alarm once more. So even if it's already masked, I can go again for a masking, a timed masking of the alarm, and then specify 30 minutes, for instance, to correct my first guess that was a little bit off, you could say. Now, what will the result be? And that's the important impact that I was mentioning before. If I took an active alarm, like on the audio output level, and I masked it, it will be moved to the masked alarm tab page. The alarm is actually still there, but it's a little bit hidden away on that masked page. What is the consequence? Well, the parameter that is normally critical here is going to be indicated with purple because it's masked. That's the purple color for masking. And the page, it's green and the device, it's green, and the view is green. So from the cube sidebar, the surveyor, it all seems a perfectly healthy situation. While it is not, I suppressed the alarm, I took it away from my system, you could say. I can still trace it back if I dig deep enough into the element itself, or if I dig deep enough into the masked tab page. But it is removed from the active alarms and it is removed from the overall alarm state. So be aware of that. Now let's take a look at an example on that, and let's take the IRD2 I have still open here, and let me make that a little bit nicer, that it's bigger again, the columns that matter. So I do have this problem here on the output gain, and I can right click on it and I can mask the alarm. I'll first go for this alarm only, and I'll go for 10 minutes, for instance. So for a limited period of time, 10 minutes, and I mask it. You can see it's purple. This one is all green again, and the device looks like it's perfectly healthy. While of course in the masked tab page, I do have this alarm there. If I say like, oh, that's gonna take some more time, you can mask the alarm again, this alarm only for a limited period of time, and for instance, give it like 30 minutes instead of the 10 minutes. Mask, and now it's gonna be for 30 minutes. If something else happens on another parameter on this device, that will, of course, still impact my active alarms. The left test level here went into alarm. My device is into alarm. Everything is into alarm because this one is not masked, of course. The masking, I did it only on that one single parameter. Let me put that again on a normal value. If I want to unmask it again, you right click on the alarm, you go for unmask. Again, you have the possibility to add some comments. You unmask it and the alarm is back active. It's influencing my DataMiner system again. So that's masking one single parameter. You can also do the masking of an element. An element, you can also mask that immediately from the surveyor. So if you have a device or an element somewhere in the surveyor tree structure, you can simply right click on the element, and from the right click menu, you can choose the mask. That's the same thing as you can launch from the alarm console. If it is already masked, like this one indicated in purple, you can then go for the unmask in the right click menu. Again, you will have the different options concerning the timing. So if I want to mask the IRD02, I have two options. You can start from one of the alarms in here, mask it, and then go to mask this element. Or you can immediately right click on the element that you have here in the surveyor, go for mask, and then it will immediately go to the second page because you selected the complete element, not a single parameter. That also means whenever the alarm is not existing, my device is perfectly okay. I don't have any alarm in my active alarms, but they call me and they say like, we will be working on this. It will generate some alarms. I can say, oh, hold on. I right click on it in the surveyor and I go for a mask. Even though there is no alarm yet, I can already mask it from here. Now the masking is again the same three options I have for half an hour, a limited period of time, until unmasking, that's indefinitely, forever, or until cleared, whenever the element is going back normal. Let's go for indefinitely this time. I don't need to specify a time now, and it will go purple, and whatever they are doing now on the device or on the element, how many alarms they generate, it doesn't really matter. Everything they do, it will just end up no longer in the active alarm. So this remains nice and stable, although I'm already generating 3 alarms. Where are they? I cannot see it in the surveyor because it's masked, it's suppressed. They are on that masked tab page. Whenever I unmask the element again, all of those 3 alarms will of course automatically immediately go to the active alarms again, and they are here influencing the overall state of my DataMiner system again. So masking is very powerful. Not only one single alarm can be masked, but also the complete element can be masked. You can do it for a specific time or indefinitely or until cleared. Powerful because it really makes an impact on the overall state of your alarms of an element or a system. Now, what else do we have available? Simply adding some comments. You can right click on an alarm and just add some comments. We already did that while we were taking ownership and while we are masking an alarm. You can add some comments. Well, you can also just right click and say like add comments, and I'm still working on it. It will take another half an hour or something. You can just add some additional information there. So the comments is being visualized in the comments column here. Note the life cycle, of course. I do have already some unmasking actions and now some comments that were added later on. So the full life cycle is, of course, displaying the adding of the comments as well. Simple, but might come in handy when you want to make sure that the other people in the team are aware of the latest updates. Last but not least, I do have the clearable alarms. That's a special case because this is not activated by default. What is this about? It is actually introducing a new state of your alarms. I mentioned before that an alarm, whenever it's being picked up by the DataMiner system, it is open, or when it disappeared, it's cleared. Forget about the middle option here, it's cleared. Whenever it's cleared, it's gone, it's green, it's out of my window and I don't see it anymore, it's in the history somewhere because I don't worry about it anymore. It's not in my active alarms anymore. Masking is just a masking action. If you mask it or unmask it, doesn't really matter. But you can introduce the clearable intermediate state, and that is actually an alarm that is kind of cleared. It is actually cleared, but we don't define it cleared yet, but because we want a user to confirm that we can make it cleared. So we make it ready to be cleared. So it's clearable, it's ready to be cleared, and it will appear in my DataMiner system as a green alarm. So whenever, for instance, my my critical alarm popped up on my audio gain there, it's critical. If it would go back normal, I fixed the problem on the elements, it would go back normal. Normally the green alarm automatically disappears from my UI. It will not disappear, but it will stay there as a green alarm, as a ready to be cleared or clearable alarm, until somebody, doesn't really matter who it is, which user is online, he selects the alarm, he says like, oh, that happens, and yeah, it's effectively fixed. So let's right click on it and let's clear the alarm. And then, only then, after that manual user intervention, it goes into cleared state and it disappears into the history out of my window. This is something you need to configure on the system. In the maintenance settings XML, you can configure that. So by default, this is not the case. Otherwise, all the alarms popping up and disappearing again would remain there forever until somebody picks it up. So by default, an alarm always disappears on a DataMiner system. But if you want to configure it else, otherwise, you can do so in the maintenance setting. And I can simulate it a little bit in this demo here by using a special option that we will see later on. In the hamburger menu, you have the automatically remove cleared alarms that I will disable for a second. We'll come back to that and I'll show the hide the side panel as well. What will happen now if I take the alarm of my IRT here, and if I clear it again, normally if I clear it, it disappears. But now you can actually see that it stays in my system. I simulated this by using an option here, remove cleared alarms. This is now only in my UI, only for my user, only for my view here. The other people active on the system wouldn't see this. So that's the big difference, of course, with the clearable alarms, but it shows you what it would look like. So the alarm is here, and then I would see, oh, this alarm happened. I can investigate if everything is effectively okay. Once it's effectively okay, you can right-click on the alarm and you can say, remove the selected cleared alarm, and now it's gone. That's basically the open, the clearable state, and the cleared that I've just shown you. To be honest, the user experience is a little bit the same, but in my case, it was more like a user setting. It was only for my user. Other people would not have been able to follow my actions. If you configure this in the maintenance settings, you would do it for the system, and everybody online in the system would see the clearable alarm. Everybody that has sufficient rights can do the clear, and everybody would see that it effectively is being removed. I did it in my UI only as a simulation, you could say. This is about alarm management. It's about procedures. So it depends on how you work. We have several features that we've covered in this alarm management section. It all depends a little bit on the procedures that you want to follow in your organization, whether you're going to more leverage the features about alarm ownership, masking of the alarms, maybe use clearable alarms, or simply adding some comments in there. Those are the options you have, of course, with DataMiner. I'm just showing you here the different possibilities. Maybe not all of them you're going to immediately apply, but you can think of which ones are the most interesting. So we took a look at the lifecycle history of the alarms that we had there by default, the opening up of the alarms with the history. We first then added some comments not comments, we took ownership of an alarm. So I defined that I will take care of the problem. We then did some masking of an alarm, potentially of a complete element. You could also mask it, simply adding some comments. And we also took a look at the clearable alarms that are possible in there. So that was a little bit on the alarm management. Now we will head over to the alarm features.